Hey guys, my name is Ava Ross and I'm here today with the Liberty Township Trustee, Tom Ferrel. Mr. Ferrel, how are you today?
I'm real good. How about you?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. Are you ready to get into it?
Certainly, let's go.
So what does it entail to be an elected official as a township trustee?
It's a good question. It's a good place to start. Township trustees take care of their, like city mayors, but instead of having one mayor and a committee group, as they do in cities, in townships we have three township trustees, and we take care of fire, police, roads, cemeteries, and zoning. So those are our main pillars of responsibility.
Cool. So can you describe an average workday for me?
Yeah, so as a trustee, it's not really a full-time job. Some weeks it is, other weeks it is not. So a normal day for us is basically working with the staff and working with the township residents. That's who we work for, is the township residents and businesses. And so we will go about our normal day, and when they have an issue, we try to get it resolved, and or we work with staff on the future and our plans going forward to make sure that we create a sustainable community. So that's our goals and that's our objectives.
So what type of issues do you work on for the residents?
The biggest issues that we seem to work on is the zoning side of our township. We are growing. We have doubled in size. We're at 44,000 residents now. At build out, they expect us to be at 80,000 residents. With that kind of growth, it is takes up most of our time planning for that future to make sure that we create a sustainable future for the next generation. Not the easiest thing in the world to do, because a lot of what ends up happening, if you have a house and someone wants to put a building behind it, you don't want it to affect your property value. Yet the township certainly needs a certain amount of business to support the township so our taxes don't get too high. The best way I can explain this is that for residential homes, for every dollar of services that a resident uses, it costs the township $1.50.
Oh, okay.
For business, it's the reverse. So in a perfect world, township would have 50% business and 50% residential, making it much easier to balance that checkbook, therefore keeping the taxes down. Unfortunately, or fortunately, some people will say in Liberty, we are about 80% residential. So we are focused on creating an environment where that commercial segment will still only be 20%, but create the revenue along the I-75 corridor so that we can be a bedroom community without bedroom community taxes. Because you can see if we were 100% residential, taxes go way up. Because remember, our only income, it's not our income, it's the taxpayer's income, comes from taxes.
So it's just hard to juggle everything.
Absolutely.
So when you're working to create a change in our community, what other officials do you work with?
We work mostly with the local officials around our own geographical area in the day-to-day. For instance, Westchester, Fairfield, Mason. So we work with the elected officials that are abut our area. Some people will say, well, why do you do that? They're your competition, and they're our competition for business. However, if our neighbors fail, we fail.
Okay.
So the attitude is that together we're stronger, and if we work together, we can create a community that everybody is happy with and can live with. So we will also work with our state reps, because we find at the local level, a lot of what we do is a Band-Aid. Meaning if there's an issue or a problem and we want to fix it, we can't always fix it without changing the law. Well, the laws aren't Liberty Township laws, they're state of Ohio laws. So we work very closely with our state reps and our senators on making sure that the laws that are going in place do not affect us negatively.
How often do you have to go to the state?
Not very often, because that's what our state rep and our state senators do. Which is George Lang and Thomas Hall right now. They come here, we go to their place, both of them are local, so we work with them here. When we have to go to the state level, we go to Columbus when there's a bill or something that's going to be passed that does affect us, and they'll ask us to go and support it. And we will go for that. But that's why they work at the state, we work at the local level.
So can the township sort of endorse legislation that's getting through?
Yes, yes, and we do. There's something called the Ohio Township Association, which basically is a group that brings together all the townships in the state. There are more townships than cities, okay? But they bring us all together and make sure that the new laws that are coming out or the new bills that are being up to pass, how they would affect the township and the residents of those townships, and then we will either endorse them or we will fight against them. The difference between a township and a city, people will ask all the time, the biggest difference comes down to taxes.
Yeah.
We don't get any taxes. We get real estate taxes only. There's no income tax in a township. So if you live and work in a township, there's no income tax. Now, that's a big plus for a business because they can come in and they don't have to pay that additional income tax. But from our standpoint, with our ability to run and fund the township, our funding mechanism is much less than it would be in a city.
Okay, interesting. So when you were in school, were you aware of this career at all?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
And
not.
I will tell people, anybody that's listening, how I got there, because I think it's a good story from the standpoint that I grew up, my father telling me that, give back to your community.
Yeah.
And so this was one of my ways of giving back. I got involved in the township when I moved into the township and just volunteered in a couple of positions, and then I was asked to get on the zoning. When I got on the zoning, I realized that it was a great place to be. I was able to make a difference. I wasn't getting any credit, but I didn't do it for the credit, okay? But I also wasn't getting any of the blame, which was the really good
that's
part.
A plus.
But we were allowed to form and create the zoning that is for the next generation here in Liberty, which I think will make a huge impact. So I really enjoyed it. And then they asked me if I wanted, someone had left and moved to Florida. One of the trustees had moved to Florida. And so they had asked me if I wanted to be appointed, which meant that I would go into the position without going through an election. This was in March of that year. And I said no. I was very happy right where I was. Then afterwards I sat back and I thought about it, and I thought, you know what, we worked very hard on creating this zoning. There are only 3 trustees. As a trustee, maybe I could make a bigger difference for the future of Liberty. And so I talked with my wife and I changed my mind, and I became a trustee. And the very next November, I had to run to keep that seat. It was never on my bucket list. It was never anywhere on my list to get involved. I will say there is a difference between a politician and an elected official. I consider myself to be an elected official, not a politician. I am not very political, but that's the beauty of a township. It is a nonpartisan race, so therefore it's not supposed to be political.
So when were you appointed? Like what year?
Ooh, good question. Give me a second here.
Okay, I'll let you think.
I'm gonna say 2009.
Okay.
In March, and then I had to run the following November.
So what did you go to school for? Just
I'm an engineer. I'm an electrical engineer. I work with computer security.
Oh, cool. You just answered that. So what was your election process like after you were appointed? Was it harder to get your name out there, or was it easier?
Yeah, it was. Never in a million years, not planning for this, would I have thought how much work it was to run a campaign.
Yeah.
The difference between running a campaign and doing the things that we all normally do is that a lot of the money that's used to run a campaign is not mine. It is friends and family's money and people who donated to the campaign. So you definitely feel obligated to give them 100%.
Yeah.
Now everything you do, you want to give 100%, but it encompassed from probably this time of year, August, until election day, probably almost all of my time, at least 40 to 60 hours a week. And that doesn't include the time that your volunteers put in, from, you know, putting up signs to knocking on doors, to talking and speaking at events to get your name out there. I had no name recognition whatsoever. Yes, I was on the zoning, and I was on the zoning for 10 years, but it's a different world. It's a world in which you're there to complete a job. Your name recognition was irrelevant. When you get into an elected official, your name recognition does become very relevant. And a lot of the voters don't know you or who you are, and they go to the polls and they see 4 or 5 names and they say, well, I recognize that name, and they check the box. The first election, and I've done this almost every election, I knocked on 1,500 doors in the township.
Wow.
And I did those by myself. I had people helping me flyers wise, but I felt it was important for the people that answered the door to see me, the person running, and get the connection and let them ask questions, rather than simply dropping off the information. I actually enjoyed that, though. People said, well, that has to be tough. And it is, because sometimes you'll knock on a door and they just slam the door in your face.
Yeah.
And you're really there, yes, to get their vote, but more importantly, to ask them a question. What can we do for you? Mm-hmm. Is there anything wrong? Do you not like the way things are going? And so it gets a little bit frustrating, but I will tell you the majority of the people here in Liberty, very welcoming. They answered the door with a smile. They were very happy and proud to live here, which makes you feel good because you know you had something to do with it.
So was it harder to have already been appointed, or do you think it would have been harder if you hadn't been appointed before?
I think it was easier being appointed because from March through November, I did get some name recognition, okay? Because obviously the appointment, I was at the meetings twice a month with the trustees and the public, so I did get to meet quite a few people from March to November. But I will tell you, when I got appointed in March and they told me I had to run in November, I said, oh, no big deal. You know, that won't be any big deal. It is a big deal.
Yeah.
It will give you a totally new respect for anyone that runs for public office, especially at positions above the local level. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they do it geographically to get and reach all the people they need to reach, and to share their platform, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. Trusting the people that are in that position, that they're gonna do what's best for the majority of the residents, not what's best for them, or in this case, their party. And that's one of the beauties of the local, is that we're supposed to be nonpartisan.
So you are nonpartisan?
Yes, yes. So school boards and trustees are nonpartisan races. They do the same thing with judges. Okay. So even though politics may come into it at times, you should never see a trustee or a school board member running and have the Republican or Democrat symbol on their signs. Now, sometimes they may support you, okay, but it is supposed to be nonpartisan, and to me, especially in the township, it's fairly important. I can't tell you most of the people that support me, whether they're Republican or Democrat, or, you know, they haven't decided. It doesn't matter to me, and it shouldn't matter. Now, my values are that of a Republican, and I follow a lot of those rules and regulations. I grew up as an Irish Catholic, so I have a lot of those values. But when it comes to making decisions, that should not be part of it.
Yeah. So, what is the one thing that you've accomplished in your career as a trustee that you're just like super proud of? Like, what do you think one of the best things you've ever done is?
Yeah, that's really hard to tell and hard to answer. I talked about my dad. One of the things he also said was to be humble. So I focus on what's next, not on what happened before.
You need to brag.
So no, it'd be better to ask somebody else. But I will tell you what I feel it was the most rewarding for me. And I think it comes down to a vision plan that we created. Being part of that vision plan. The vision plan was something that was put together that is the foundation for zoning. So when we make a zoning change, if someone wants to change what their property's zoned at and build something else, whether it be, you know, a new commercial building or a new residential development, they have a set of rules that the state of Ohio gives us that they have to follow. They can't just build anything anywhere. And that's our zoning. But when making a decision, if someone wants to change, we look at our existing zoning and we look at our existing vision plan. That vision plan is something that took 18 months to create. It was not just me. I was just happened to be one of the people on that board. It was very nice, and I felt honored to be part of it. It included residents, business owners, and stakeholders throughout the township that would get together, and it took 18 months to create it, that we put together this vision plan that said, this is what we want Liberty to look like for the next generation. And it became the foundation. It becomes the foundation for the future. And every day when something's getting done, I know that that plan is being used, whether I'm here or not, and long after I'm gone, that plan will still be part of Liberty's future, and it will set it. So I'm proud to be part of that. There's a lot that we've accomplished in the 12 years that I've been here, but that vision plan will outlast us all, I believe.
How many years ago was the vision plan created? Could you tell me?
So I have been here, I'm in my 3rd term, and then that 6 weeks, so I've been here, I'm in my 13th year. Before I became a trustee, the first vision plan for Liberty Township was done, I want to say in the 2006, 2007 time frame, maybe a little later. And then we just redid it here in 2020. The first vision plan that I was a part of before I became a trustee, and then to be a part of the second vision plan that was put together that will affect, I believe, generations. Because it's hard. We have a blank slate and we're building, okay, because we have open land. It's not that we are going out and recruiting everybody to build. People see the reason why to come to Liberty, and they're coming, and we have to put some rules and regulations in place to make sure that it's sustainable. And so these vision plans give us a foundation to work off of. And the vision plan that we did before and this vision plan will probably last most of our build out. It's very difficult to redevelop an area. Mm-hmm. So what we've done in those 2 vision plans will be here for generations, and it will affect them. And
how different are the vision plans?
They're not very much different. Great question. So we used the original vision plan as part of the foundation to build the new vision plan. But at the end of the day, there's a lot that's the same, but things have changed over the years, especially since COVID, right? Yeah. And even though this was done during COVID and came out shortly after, we've even made some slight adjustments since then, because the world has changed. We have to change with it or we'll be left behind. So the main changes between the 2 vision plans had to do with a few small areas, mainly along that I-75 corridor. Yeah. That we made some changes to make sure that we would be able to attract businesses that would be here for decades, because we need their revenue. And so that's the main difference. We just changed some of the zoning in those areas. I shouldn't say zoning, we changed the vision plan for the zoning of the future in those particular areas. Most of the residential area stayed the same, but we did find a few things we needed to do to protect those residential areas. Liberty is what they are today because of the residents that have come here. And we need to make sure that we take care of their property values by making sure that what goes and abuts their residential neighborhoods will not decrease their value. So we made a few adjustments in the residential areas to make sure that commercial couldn't abut them. And then we made changes along the I-75 corridor. There's some other subtle changes, but that was the main change between the 2.
Very cool.
So.
Well, thank you so much for meeting with me. That's all the questions.
It was my pleasure. It was nice meeting you.